Welcome to episode 14 of Blowin' Wind with the Great Southern Brain Fart. That's right, folks, 14 episodes. Y'all must be gluttons for punishment. Anyway, this time around we're going to be featuring singer, songwriter, guitar player extraordinaire Jeff Angell of Walking Papers and of Static Land and of Missionary Position and of whatever, because he's just a busy motherfucker. I have to say, though, I've been doing interviews for nearly 10 years, and it's always awesome for me when a connection is made. You know, sometimes an interview is just an interview. It's a Q&A, it's fun, it's very much thank you, see you later kind of thing. I've been lucky enough, though, to have some pretty amazing moments when a connection was made that went beyond the plane of just doing an interview, where I could just tell that there was something there to be unlocked. That was definitely the case with Jeff. When Jeff was in town with Walking Papers, they were on tour with Alice in Chains playing at the Roxy Theater. Jeff and I took a walk around the venue, and we found ourselves talking a good bit about the art of songwriting. So being a songwriter myself, I found it fascinating to get into his head and really dissect how he did things, you know. We also talked about what it's like having Duff McKagan in his band. We talked about the new album, Walking Papers 2. And from there, we just kind of went off the cuff. Jeff is a really interesting, very cool, and laid-back guy, and I hope you all will enjoy getting to know Jeff from Walking Papers. And if you haven't heard Walking Papers yet, I highly suggest you do so. So without further ado, let's get to know Jeff Angell from Walking Papers, right here on Blowin' Wind with the Great Southern Brain Fart.
Welcome to the Blowin' Wind podcast, Jeff.
I love it. Pleasure to be here.
Now you're blowing wind with me now. You know, you like that, you know, so you don't get any classier than that, man. You know,
I had a song I wrote once called Where the Wild Winds Blow, and someone called me and asked me if they could use that title, and then they put me as a character in their story, and it just got published in a book.
No kidding.
Yeah, so a lot of wind blowing going on in these in the world today. Well, is it wind or is it hot air? I'm not sure. It's one of the two.
Yeah, well, you know, I've been told I'm a little bit of everything. So, you know, it depends on who you talk to and what day. Ask my wife. Yeah. I'm sure she'll say it's all the above. You know, but I mean, so tell me about that story. That's kind of a cool way to kick off the thing, because I don't know that I was even aware of that. Well, how did that?
Yeah, this guy took a liking to our band. This guy, his name's Matt Hayward, and he's a Irish author, and he does mostly like kind of a horror noir fiction kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And he's been kind of doing really, really kicking it out lately. But he's also a musician guy, so he kind of knew of our band, and he did he put together the comic book for one of our songs, Out of the Blue, and then he also asked me if he minded if I used that title for one of his songs, for one of his short stories. So I guess apparently I think it's called, I'm not sure what it's called off the top of my head, but it's a bunch of different horror writers got together to write about a fictitious venue. Mm-hmm. And so it's like but it's in all periods of time, and or something like that. No, I think I'm getting his stories crossed, you know. But so anyways, he has the story, and the story of some guys driving like he's maybe a truck driver or something like that. It's kind of like the Phantom 309 story. Do you know that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
it's similar to that, but it's a little bit opposite, like more like the guy did a hit and run or something, and then later on he's haunted by the the person that he did the hit and run on, and so that's where the horror comes in. And the song's called "Where the Wild Winds Blow." It was a song that I wrote, and then he used that title, and then I get to be a bartender in the story, which is fun. Since I've never tended bar before, but I think I could handle it.
Hey, especially depending on where it is, if it's in a certain part of the country and they don't want fancy drinks, you can sling some beers and pour some whiskey, Yeah,
and if they're asking for fancy drinks, they might not even know the difference anyways,
Yeah, exactly. That's so cool though, because I had the pleasure of hanging out with you when you were here in Atlanta, and one of my favorite experiences actually. And we took that long walk around the baseball stadium, and we were talking about songwriting, and I just love that songs can be kind of taken from out of their natural context, which would be song, and kind of transposed into stories and things like that, because essentially it's almost like they're doing the opposite of what we do as songwriters, where we take stories and we turn them into songs. But taking songs and turning them into stories, that's kind of cool. That must be kind of cool for you to see as a as a songwriter, to see your songs like come to life in a different medium.
Oh, I love it. I think it's great. I mean, I think that, that's what songs do to me. When I hear someone's songs, I have visuals that, the song triggers visuals in my brain and this and that, and I have my own ideas, and then maybe I create a backstory, or I relate it to somebody that I know or something like that, so it's like, I think songs are like that. It's like looking through a keyhole or something into a whole nother world that's going on there, but you're not really able to go in there, but you're able to kind of have a look around and then kind of make up your own mind about, the other areas of it that aren't clearly being displayed,
Mm-hmm.
The mystery of it is what makes it, it's such a magical, mysterious kind of thing that, songs are, and how they work, and the way that the vibrations of the chords and the harmonics and stuff create these, trigger these emotions and thoughts, and then you put that together with, the right words or the right settings and stuff, and it can definitely do something that doesn't seem to be able to be captured in other mediums.
It really is, because I've always loved that, like how I think we were talking about this too the last time you were here. Is it like how you can hear like a certain song, and like sometimes like you might listen to a song and just be like, that's a really great song, but then some song will like make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, or like some songs will make you tear up, and some songs will make you laugh, and then other songs are just kind of songs, and like that's a pretty powerful and it's a pretty incredible display of power to have as a human being, to be able to do that. And I think if you remember, we were talking about it, and that's like one of the things I always think of is people ask me, like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I always wonder, like, why doesn't everybody do it? You know what I mean? Because I feel like, I feel like it's something that anybody can do, but yet it's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's also like one of the funnest things to do too, like just making up goofy rhymes and songs about things with your friends or something, and people like Jimmy Fallon or Saturday Night Live or stuff like that, or the Flight of the Conchords and stuff, they made a career out of that, or of just like, or Weird Al Yankovic, whatever. That's when your songs really hit, is when people take your songs and they change the lyrics to be clown you. You know what I mean? That's the mark of a smash, But I think, it's another thing I find interesting is it's like different cultures. What creates a sad song in America is kind of considered a happy song on the other side of the world. As well as like all the minor chords are like, that's party music in Eastern Europe.
Right.
Right. And so in America, it would be considered kind of dreary and down, and it's like a lot of it is like, the cultural what, where you grow up and how your what culture you grow up in dictates, how music affects you too. It's interesting. And it's like same thing. Like I often wonder about, the Bob Dylan thing where he's like, when he sings, he ends at the end with a high note.
Yeah, right.
And it's kind of his style. And the funny thing about that is that it's like they say that anytime, like it's the question. When people ask, if I was asking you a question, I might put that little inflection at the end of the sentence.
Right.
And they say that goes back to when our mothers talk to us when we're little, and they use that high voice that it inspires this kind of inquisitive thought in our brain. You know what I mean?
Oh, so yeah.
Sometimes I wonder if Bob Dylan was the best songwriter. He recognized that putting that little inflection at the end of his melodies made people want to listen, Because the thing is that you always heard, like regardless of what you think, what anyone thinks about Dylan's voice, like the two things that always stuck out to me was that and the fact that you always understood every single word he was saying, Yeah, his enunciation's amazing.
Oh.
Where other people, you get these warblers that who knows what the hell they're saying, and they don't even have to write good lyrics because no one knows what the hell they're saying.
Or like the over singers who are like and it's like, okay, so you just like you're saying one word for like 6 bars,
Well, and that is a genius. That's a genius quote by Bob Dylan. Is that he's like, to him the best quality. I think he just did it at that they did like some kind of lifetime achievement thing, and he says, I've heard singers that can, sing the word love with 32 syllables, but it's like he's like the most important quality in a singer is whether you believe them or not,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I agree, so it's like Bob Dylan's believable, but his voice has never been, but you can understand what he's saying and you believe him, so therefore he's a great singer.
Absolutely, and it's his voice, But I mean, So when did your journey begin as a songwriter? Like I mean, we all have that initial part, where because you and I also are very close in age, and so I started writing songs like back when I was younger, and of course they were probably they were punk songs and metal songs and whatever, and pretty bad songs. You know what I mean? But where did your journey begin? And
my journey began probably pre-kindergarten, and I took the words to Barry Manilow's "I Made It Through the Rain," and I changed it to "I Made It Through the War." And I was write some horrible lyrics about some guy. It's probably like the equivalent of like "One" by Metallica, So the guy, and I was an army brat, and so it's like as a lot of young kids are all running around with sticks playing war in the yard, and somehow I heard the "Made It Through the Rain," and I changed all the lyrics to "Made It Through the War," and I made all the all the lyrics were about some guy that, came back as like a hero with and he got medals, but he didn't have any legs anymore. And it was like kind of a sad, horrible story, but at the same time, it was like, it's interesting when people talk to me about that, like music and this and that, and people say, I didn't choose music chose me. And I could say that's totally true. It's like I just was drawn to it before I ever thought about. I had never seen a concert, and I'd never knew, my grandpa played guitar, but I hadn't even met him at that point in my life, to where songs were already kind of like, they were getting my attention, that they were happening out there in the world, and I would hear the song and I wouldn't, they'd take me someplace. So I was just drawn to it, and I was instantly like, I've always kind of been like that, if someone's, it's like sports, like people watch sports. To me, I'm not the type of person that I can't watch sports. I see them watching the sports, playing sports, and I immediately want to go grab a basketball and go play.
Right.
So same thing if I hear people are writing songs, I immediately want to go write a song.
Right.
It doesn't make me go, oh, this is great. Let's tune into that. Like, I'm just that kind of person. So it's like, if something's interesting to me, I want to know how it works. You know what I mean? I want to know why it is that way, and I want to kind of create my own version. You know what I mean? Or I'm inspired. So I get inspired by seeing people do things or hearing other songs or this and that. And that's what triggers me to want to take action on that inspiration. And I think that's the key to all. That's the difference between a songwriter and a listener, or a songwriter and a musician. Some people that inspiration, they do something with it. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's an action there's the inspiration, and then there's the action following that, and that's the difference between a songwriter and a listener.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think that, like what you were saying about like the difference between a songwriter and a musician is that you can be both, but they're not always both. Like I mean, no.
I've known some great songwriters that are hardly musicians.
Oh, exactly. And like I play with
sometimes they're better.
Yeah, I play with two really great musicians in a band who don't write songs. Or at least they don't write songs for this band. I mean, they might dabble in it, or they might write a little, but they're not songwriters. And so and it's always interesting to me to kind of hear people talk about how they kind of hone their craft and everything. So like has the way you write changed much over the years, as far as like do you have a formula, or like is it just one of those kind of things where it just happens however it comes? Because you write a lot.
I don't know. Yeah, lately I haven't. Lately I'm kind of like, I guess you got to have time to do it, and some songs kind of write themselves, but I kind of let go by if I had a formula, I would get bored pretty quick. You know what I mean? So right. I like them that they come from different ways. You know what I mean? But the more, it's like any muscle. The more you exercise it, the easier it gets. But it's also the better you get at it, the harder it gets, because your standards are raised in your expectations of what a good song is. And so, which is, I think, a lot of songwriters struggle with too. It's like, what's a hit? A lot of songs that are hits and resonate with a lot of people, to a guy that's written a lot of songs, are usually really boring. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's challenging in some ways, but to me, I always have I always have notebooks and stuff like that, because a song, the difference between a song and a jam is lyrics.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So it's like lyrics make, to me, if you ask me what, music is music. And lyrics are lyrics, or they're poetry or whatever, or a story. And then a song is a marriage between, music and lyrics. So a song is, a chord structure with lyrics and a melody. But that melody, the arrangements of how that song is played can change. You know what I mean? That doesn't, but it's still the same song. So, but, music is, it's beautiful as it is. It's just music on its own. And when the lyrics and the music come together and they validate each other, that's when it becomes a song, which I think is to me is a little bit, I don't know. I don't want to say it's a higher form, because music, I like a lot of instrumental music, and a lot of it I'm fascinated by it, because I find by it not having lyrics, it inspires me to maybe even come up with my own lyrics for it.
See, and I love that, because I have a good friend of mine who's really into he's very much a musician, and just a good example is that for years he's tried to turn me on to Frank Zappa, and I appreciate music and I love music for what it is, but I'm a lyricist and I'm a story guy and I love lyrics, and whether even as corny as some of the corniest Poison and Rat songs or whatever, those are some well-crafted songs in their own. So when you get music that is so overly musical, and then lyrics that are kind of of that Zappa-esque kind of thing, to me, I can't channel that, because that kind of goes against what I like as or what I do as an artist, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, well, totally. The Frank Zappa, to me, it's I find it challenging to listen to. But same with the Mars Volta. There's certain things that I like about what they're doing, and I think it's interesting, but I don't know if I like it or if I just find it interesting. And to me, it's kind of like a thrift store. You know, there's like some thrift store where people kind of curate what's in there. You know what I mean? And it has a vibe and there's a style, and then there's like a Katie's Closet, and it's just anything goes. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, it's like anything that's old and used, whether it has a value or not, they're going to put it in the store, and then they think they're impressing you by the sheer volume of how much shit they have in this store, you know, over it. So, and that's, to me, is what Frank Zappa's music is like. Look at all this crazy stuff. It's complicated. Don't you know this is a paperback first edition Born Identity novel from paperback? You know, and it's like there's a lot of shit that's going on those records that I don't care about, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, to where I'm like, you know, if diluted out, and, you know, I might need someone to show me what the good stuff is, but it's like, you know, Frank has a lot to say, you know what I mean? And there's an audience out for him to get off on what he's doing, and they like that chaos and the craziness and all the, you know, all that stuff going on. To me, I usually like it a little more diluted than that, you know?
See, I like, you know, I mean, like, if you, like, that's why I always said, like, I like the organized chaos of things like Alice Cooper, you know, or even, like, you know, like Ryan Adams, who can be pretty chaotic in his own way, you know, when it comes to lyrics. But at the same time, there's some organization to that chaos that kind of channel that I can connect with. You know what I mean? That I can say, okay, there's some pretty crazy shit in there, and you're saying some pretty, you know, interesting things there, and rhyming certain words that I never would have heard. But like, I can get behind it because it's closer to me than, like you said, like, you know, Katie's Closet. You know what I mean? Where it's like way too much.
I think Frank Zappa's, I think he's kind of an antagonist. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I think his music is meant to rub you, you know, it's meant to get a rise out of you and to make, you know, challenge you, you know what I mean? And some people, you know, Charles Mingus or something is another guy that's doing the same kind of thing, or, you know, or, you know, and it's like, but I do like some jazz and stuff like that too, you know. I don't know, so it's like, you know, there's something for everybody. I'm not against Frank or whatever, you know, but to tell you the truth, I haven't really dug in, because the stuff that I heard, I was kind of like, yeah, it's a little, I'm not sure if that's making me feel good or feel agitated, you know what I mean? But I did listen to, I've probably, like the Mars Volta, I had the same reaction, but then I listened to them a lot, trying to like understand it, you know what I mean? And then I was when I was bugging in there, I thought there was some really cool stuff that was going on that I got, you know, like some of the guitar modes and stuff that they were choosing to do, and, you know, singing sometimes in Spanish and sometimes in English, and like, you know, like I could tell that, you know, I could hear the sophistication in the passion and what they were doing, where some of the Frank stuff I think is a little more like posturing and a little more showing off, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, look how fast we can play. Look at, we could think of some wacky ideas here, to where, to me, that's cool, but I don't find it as it's stimulating to me, you know what I mean?
Right.
You know?
Well, so like you have quite a history behind you too, as a artist and as a musician, and I mean, you played the whole major label game. You've been through it all, man. Like, at this point, most people our age have like tapped out and said, like, you know, I'm fucking done. Like, but what was it that kept you going? Because whatever it was, it brought walking papers back. It brought walking papers into like a scene, you know what I mean? That like, where you guys seemed to just kind of fit right in. Yeah, and I mean, and when I mean fit in, I don't mean like hip fit in. I mean more like, it almost just seemed like the right time for that kind of music. Does that make sense? So, like, you know...
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying. That's because that's society, you know, like... I love the quote that Carrie Fisher had said recently, and it was like they were picking on her because of her age in Star Wars or whatever, right? And she was saying, people think that youth and beauty is an accomplishment. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think the same thing's true in music. Like, I just saw I went to the Chess Records on tour when we were in Chicago. Howlin' Wolf, and I knew this, but Howlin' Wolf was 41 years old before he made his first record. 41.
Yeah.
He's Howlin' Wolf. You know what I mean? What if Howlin' Wolf was like, you know what, I'm not looking as good as I used to. My voice is a little scratchy. I think I'm going to hang it up. You know, why was he doing it? Was Howlin' Wolf making music because it brought him joy, or was he making music because he thought it was going to, save him from poverty? You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like a lot of people are playing music for the wrong reasons, and I wish that most of them would get out of the way. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, because there's people out there that actually have honest statements and this and that. And I mean, and I see some of the stuff going on, whether it's, in hip hop and rock and this and that. And it's like, you get a little envious sometimes if you see some guy and you're like, that guy just, all he did was take Rage Against the Machine and Muse and put it together, and now all of a sudden he's a huge star. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or like the Five Fingered Death Punch. Let's just do a cover of every hit song, or what's the other one? The Sound of Silence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Disturbed when they did that. Yeah.
I mean, isn't that like their whole thing is they just do covers of old songs, right? I don't know, but because I haven't paid much attention.
But that's what you know him for. That's what you know him for. And if that's what you know him for,
and they're huge, and people buy that shit. You know what I mean? And so, like, to me, they made some genius thing, but it isn't an artistic statement. You know what I mean? They're not artists. They're not, but I think if a person's going to do, like, choose an artist lifestyle or whatever, like, most, there is some, the suffering that, you have to follow your muse rather than follow the dollar. And I think that's a challenging thing. So why do I still do it? Because I was never doing it for the money in the first place.
Right.
I just do it because it still interests me to write songs and make records, and I enjoy it. And so it's been great to have these new opportunities, but I'm not like I wasn't. I think there's been parts where when I was younger, I think I had a hard time finding a voice because I kept thinking, you had to conform to do these things to try to make a thing happen. So it wasn't until I stopped trying that things started happening. It's when I just said, fuck it, and just went along with what I like. That's when things actually started opening up for me, and that didn't happen until I was around 27, 28. And that's when I started, making records that I'm proud of and that I want to listen to. And before then, it seemed like I knew what it was to be an artist, but I had abandoned that, thinking like, what do we got to do to get a deal? You know what I mean?
Right.
And then once I started thinking like that, nothing happened. And then and all the music that I made is music that I'm embarrassed of and wish would go away. You know what I mean? But sometimes you have to go there to figure out what it is. And then once I was like, you know what, that's it isn't working and I don't like it anyways. And then you find out, you try to redeem yourself.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Thank God I didn't get famous, because some people they do that and then they can never get out of that. And then they're, you know what I mean? And it's like, and it seems like the lifespan of the people that think that way are pretty short, the career lifespan.
It's so funny that you say that, because people are always talking about how they're so glad that like oh man, I'm so glad Facebook didn't fucking exist back when I was a kid, or I'd be fucking in jail or whatever. You know what I mean? Like all I can think of is like, man, I'm so glad that home recording didn't exist when I was a kid, because man, if some of that shit leaked out, I would be like, no, please don't listen to that, man. Don't listen. Yeah. You don't want to listen to my song that I wrote, in my punk band called The Ballad of Jeffrey Dahmer. Do not listen to that song. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've had a couple myself, and that's like sometimes I'm walking around in the world and I see certain people talking, and the way that they treat other people, and I'll go, that sounds a lot like someone that's never got their ass knocked out before. You know what I mean? And I think that's true that's to me why I care so much about lyrics. Having written a couple songs and I'm horrified of the lyrics that are on those songs, I'm really careful of what I say. You know what I mean? Well, and the same thing, like if someone that's, been given a fat lip before, it makes you a little maybe think about what you're saying to people. You know what I mean?
It totally does.
Yeah, so I think that that's how I think about songwriting too. That it's like I'm going to be, these lyrics are going to follow me around, so I want to make sure that they're something worth saying. You know what I mean? Not so much that it's not going to offend people, but more to the fact of like, is it worthy of being a song? You know what I mean?
Exactly, and that's why I was interviewing one of my favorite bands. It's this Finnish band called Jess and the Ancient Ones, and I was talking to them and their singer, and I was like, oh my God, I'd love to hear some of like your old demos. And she was like, no, you won't, and you'll never hear them. And she was like, because like those are parts of like our lives when we were first starting, that we were still trying to find ourselves and we were still trying to figure things out. And she was like, she's like, and the minute those things get leaked out, they become, it's a barnacle of sorts, like it just becomes attached to you. And even if it wasn't something that was uninsulting or anything, or something that was insulting, it's just that everything that you put out that is accessible to the public becomes attached to you somewhere or another down the line, So there's a reason why I didn't record, there's a reason why I'm very thankful there aren't recordings of a lot of my older band songs, because we were just stupid kids writing stupid songs. But then at 44, I'm looking back on and I'm going, that could potentially hurt some people's feelings, and probably even hurt some feelings of people that I'm very close to. But of course we're like, oh, it's funny, it's silly. But when you're 16, you don't think like that. You think like a 16-year-old. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and it's it's awkward. All those songs have pimples and their voices are cracking and they're wearing braces, and you know what I mean?
Bad hair. bad 80s and 90s hair, man. I know you were there, dude.
Yeah.
Well, so
yeah, all those songs have hair growing in funny places.
So another thing I wanted to talk to you about, because it's also really cool, because again, like talking to you, one of the things that I enjoy about it, especially from the songwriter standpoint that we talked about, and as being friends and stuff, is that it's very rare that the people that I get to talk to are close enough in age, you know what I mean, to me that they
35.
can. I'm 22. But we were talking about social media, for instance, is that so recently, my band, we're just a small band here in Atlanta. We play, like I was telling you, and we were talking to a PR person, and the first thing, he was some young kid out of LA, and he's like, so what's your social media game like, man? And I'm like, you need to speak English to me, dude. And he's like, let me pull you up. And he's like, dude, your social media game is totally off point, man. You need to get your numbers up. You need to get likes up and stuff like that. And I was curious to ask you about that. Now that you're in it, I mean, obviously Walking Papers is an established act. It's got you've got a pretty hardcore, cult following. But how do you perceive and how do you look at social media tied to music and the quality of music?
Well, I think it's a necessary evil, but I mean, in a lot of ways, I think it's, some things are the same old. It's just a different way of going about it. I mean, in some ways, it's a lot of these things, whether it's technology, home recording, social media, internet, it's the best thing that ever happened for musicians. And at the same time, it's the worst thing that ever happened for musicians. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's pretty, I think that's the deal with all of it. There's some people that do it really well. The problem is with me, with social media, and I've had social media coaches at times, and I've had, and I've seen the thing, Instagram's like doing really well now, and it's like it used to be all about Facebook. And then, you know, and like when Instagram came out, I was like, man, I don't want to have to do two of these things. And then of course now you're like, well, you're 10 years behind on Instagram because everybody else got on it when it came out. But it's like I never got into music to do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So to me, it's like a necessary evil, and it is a good connection with fans. So it's like, I'm trying to see, how can you enjoy this? You know, so then there's people that help us with that, but it's like, I'm not, because it's not something that I enjoy and I'm passionate about it. And if you're not passionate about it, then it's like, it's hard to be good at it, you know? And I think that there is a lot of young people and young musicians that are passionate about it. They think it's great, and they get some validation by having the likes and this and that. To me, it's just kind of, it's more like, oh, we got to do the social media, so we got to post something. You know what I mean? You know, and
that's me, you know, every fucking day, dude. I'm like, oh my God, it's like, you know, you get that notification. It's like, hey, Collins Drive, your fans haven't heard from you for like 28 days. And I'm like, okay, Jesus Christ. And should I like Facebook Live
say,
the taking people a shit? You know, like,
the people that I know are the most successful in music are because they're great networkers, not because they're the best songwriters and the best musicians.
Right.
That's my opinion. And or they're people that were established before the internet. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So those people, you know, and that was a different game there. It was a numbers game then, and the numbers game then was how much money do you got to throw into something to make it break through? You know what I mean? Because something, you know, a great idea that doesn't get marketed is just a great idea that no one knows about it. I know tons of great talented songwriters and stuff that are just not making anything happen because they don't either invest in themselves or they don't have someone to invest in them. But the problem is now, it's like, you know, with these things, it's like, it's not, you know, there's the vacuum thing at some point to where like there's all these great things that are happening, but everybody's, you know, screaming into the vacuum of whatever. I'm not sure what that statement is, but it's like you know, a lot of people that are out there, but they don't know how to get people's attention, you know. And so there's these things too. People are like, music sucks now. No, it's not. There's tons of great people out there. It's harder to find them because so many people are vying for your attention all the time. And now every single person, you know, you're not going to buy a magazine or whatever to see some cool pictures or whatever, because everybody thinks that they're a star and they're all selfieing and doing all these things like that. And people are enjoying it, which I think is fine, but it does, you know, if you're looking to be entertained, it's like, I'm not sure that your Aunt Mary's Facebook photos are going to be as entertaining as someone that's their profession to entertain you, you know?
Right.
But you might get something else out of it. So I guess it's a good, you know, there's good and evil to all of it. But I think that, you know, it's kind of interesting. And then there's all this other stuff going on, just like the same way you have people lip syncing, you have people that are faking their numbers, just no different than the Beatles' first single was bought you know, they made it number one because Brian Epstein bought all the copies at his store, you know, or Hey Joe by Jimi Hendrix. Here we are picking on Five Finger Death Punch, but Jimi Hendrix made it off a cover. So
right.
did the Rolling Stones. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah,
it's like
exactly.
The Rolling Stones didn't even record an original song till their third album.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like this, it's been lame before and it's been great before, and it's like, you know, how these things happen or whatever. It's like sometimes as a songwriter or whatever, as a musician, sometimes you're questioning it and you want to see the errors in everybody else's because it justifies, why aren't my numbers up? You know, well, sometimes maybe just your voice ain't for everybody. But, you know, then you can always go back. If you want to feel good about that, you can go back to, at one point, Miles Davis, Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, and Thelonious Monk were playing a bar in New York to 40 people.
Oh,
you know what I mean? So, and like we just said, Howlin' Wolf didn't get famous. He didn't even record a song until he was 41 years old. And if he didn't have the Rolling Stones drag him over to Europe and cover his songs or Willie Dixon songs, those guys might have died poor, and some of them did.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But it's so funny because how it just kind of, you know, translates into, I mean, you know, because at the level that I'm at as a musician, you know, I find myself having to, you know, like I run our social media, you know, like I run our Instagram, and I
you don't enjoy it.
You know, the funny thing is that I would probably enjoy it if I was doing it for someone else, but it's almost like every amount of time, every minute I spend doing it is like a minute that I'm not spending playing my guitar or like working on a song or like working on a lyric. So like, at some point it's just kind of like this hindrance. But for someone like you though, where like your social media is at like such a high level now, do you pay much?
I don't think it is. I think it's at a low level. It all depends on who you're comparing it to.
Let's compare it to the 200 likes that my that my band has. You're fucking up there, dude. You know what I mean? But even in that situation, like, do you pay much attention to it? Like, do you like take any of it to heart? Like, because I mean, obviously that we've learned.
I do. I mean, when people if I do it, to me it's more like downtime. If I'm sitting in the van and I'm driving down the road, and someone, some fan is nice enough to write a comment onto something, it's like I want to respond and make, I'm a grateful person, what I mean? So it's like if people, like I was starting on this tour, I was like, sometimes I'm talking some banter, but then sometimes there ain't time at a show, and it's just like, what am I, if I have one thing I'm going to say to the audience, it's going to be like, it's a privilege and a pleasure to play music for you. That don't matter if it's 3,000 people or 30 people, because it is. It's a privilege. It's for those people to give you their attention and their time, and anytime someone that's listening to something that you have to say or do it, it is a privilege, and I'm grateful for those people's attention, and so, because it validates what I'm doing, you know what I mean? And I think, so I don't mind that, but at the same time, it's like I'll have the record company and be like, will you make us a video for this and that? And I'm like, I don't want people to see the inside of my world. You know what I mean? I don't want the world to know that right now I'm sitting in here in some too tight shorts, sweaty from going on a run with the Darth Vader T-shirt that my daughter gave me for Christmas. You know what I mean? A picture of that's not going to help my Facebook. It's not going to help my musician
Jeff.
profile. You know what I
mean? Speak for yourself, dude, because that'd make a hell of a photo.
They're like stars. Stars are just like us. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, look at him. I was like, but that's no, I totally get that, because like, when I look at social media and how it's used with bands, like I feel like some bands overuse it. I feel like some bands underuse it, but then I find that some bands have found this, like, I don't know if you've heard of them. They're from, I think if you have, we talked about them, Graveyard from Sweden. Like they found this way to use their social media, especially like their Facebook, where it's almost like a mystery. You know what I mean? It's like well, you don't hear from them for a while, and then all of a sudden,
wife also owns this Sisters of the Black Moon clothing.
Oh yes, Jonathan.
Yeah,
he's a good friend of mine. Yeah.
Well, they totally built that whole thing, and it's all been built on social media and word of mouth. And it's like there's some people that are really good about it, and I actually like watching it. Another guy that I really like, I'm not a huge fan of his music, but I like the Father John Misty. His social media is great. He's hilarious. To me, at this point, it crosses some line of like, what is this person? You know what I mean? Is he a musician, or is he a songwriter, or is he a figure? He's a public figure. He's an entertainer of sorts. So he found a way to, like, are you like, is he serious or is he making fun of himself? You know what I mean?
Right.
And then, of course, I've also seen, like, I'm a big Nick Cave fan and Tom Waits as well, but then I see, like, Tom Waits will not be bothered, and he makes everybody sign non-disclosure agreements, Right. But you're never going to see Tom Waits he's never going to do some Spoken Head documentary where he's going to let people into his life ever, because it would probably ruin his thing.
Right.
But then you have Nick Cave, he's like on his third movie he just made about himself.
Right, yeah.
And I would have never thought that he would do it, but he doesn't seem to have a problem laughing at himself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in a different way. So some people find a way to do it and maintain their integrity and have a little humility in it. And I think that's great. To me, I'm not, I'm a little I like to live vicariously through the songs, but I don't really think that I'm interesting enough person that I want cameras to follow me around. And anytime I've been invited to do that kind of thing, I've usually kind of been like, no thanks. I don't mind talking to people, and I don't mind getting my picture taken or whatever is part of the deal, but like, I don't want to like, try to put together like home movies and stuff like that. It's like I always kind of regret it,
You don't want to be in the real world, like the TV show, where you're like following around 24/7,
Yeah, and I've had some invitations to do a couple of those things, and I've always bowed out. But that's funny, because to me, there's this a plus and a negative to it from a fan standpoint. But for me, like a plus to me is like, as huge of an Iron Maiden fan as I am, and as huge of a Grateful Dead fan as I am, I've never met, except for I met Bruce Dickinson once, many years ago, and he was a super nice guy. But like, I don't know that I would want to see a day in the life of Bruce Dickinson, or like a day in the life of somebody, because to me it's like I have this image in my head of what they are, and I want to keep that. You know what I mean? Like I don't necessarily want to know what he eats for breakfast. Do you know what I mean? Or like, what he exercises to and stuff like that, and I always feel like when people want that much information on an artist, it's just kind of like, it kind of goes into that kind of stalkery territory. You know what I mean? Yeah, or if somebody creates a persona for themselves, and that's what they want you to see. And I think that's the Tom Waits thing, he created a persona for himself that's working. But I think that, I don't know, in the Nick Cave movies, which we always buy the tickets and go see it in the theater and everything, and because we're fans. But in his one movie, he's talking about that he, the lines got blurred, and now he just became that person. So they're waking up and being that person all the time, and I don't know that I would ever want to be, to like, you create this persona for yourself and then you're trying to live up to be that thing. That's more than, I kind of like sitting on the fence and being able to traverse the two areas at will. You know what I mean? My family and stuff and my friends mean a lot to me, and I like to be goofy and this and that. I don't like to be thinking about how many numbers I'm going to get, likes I'm going to get like this, or my face doesn't look so attractive under this light and at this angle, and that's a weird world to live in. And there's that brilliant Quincy Jones article that was out, and everybody went and watched it because they talked about Richard Pryor and Marlon Brando getting it on. Have you heard about that?
No.
He said that Richard Pryor and Marlon Brando got physical with each other or whatever, and it was this huge shocker. So of course the internet went crazy about it, and then the interviews with Quincy Jones. But then when you see the Quincy Jones interview, there's all sorts of really great wisdom in the interview, and that's just the shocking point that got everybody to pay attention.
Right.
But when you read the interview, he says that he has this thing that he says a couple times in there, and he's like, once people start talking about numbers, God leaves the room.
Oh, yeah.
So he's like saying, once people start trying to think about writing hits, or once people start thinking about who's getting paid for what, great things stop happening.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's kind of true. It's like if the Instagram, if you're worried about what people are going to think about it, you're not going to be good at it. And two, if you're worried about how many likes you're going to get, it's going to cause you stress. You know what I mean? So it's like,
well, it's also going to take away from, it's also going to deter from your art, which is, because the whole point isn't for people to like you on Facebook. The whole point is for people to like your art that you're projecting via Facebook. You know what I mean? And so, like,
I don't even think the point is for people. If the point is for people to like your art, then I think you're doing it wrong too.
Oh, interesting.
I think the point is that you should make the art should be an expression of what do you like the art? Who gives a fuck what anybody else thinks? You know what I mean? So if you like it, then it's good. And if someone else, if you don't like it, then it ain't. And that's true whether you're a virtuoso or if you're an audience member. You're right, because it's your opinion. I think the problem where all this shit goes wrong is where people start letting other people decide what they like, or they think it's good based on how many numbers it has. How many. And I think, to me, as an artist, once you're writing something for what you think people will like, you're producing something. You're producing a product. It's not art, because art is an expression of someone's feelings and emotions.
Right.
They're making a creation. When it stops being art, when people start doing it to not please themselves, but to please other people. Now, if you happen to be one of these people that produces art that everybody seems to enjoy, then that's great for you. But there's been a lot of great artists that people didn't understand what they were doing for years afterward,
And that's interesting that you say that, because, and maybe it's because it's also, as a songwriter and as an artist, that I feel like, sometimes I fall into that hole. Do you sometimes find yourself falling into that hole, like every now and then, where you're just kind of like...
Nah, I stopped that a long time ago.
And how did you get out of that? Because, and that's more of a feedback question for me, because I'm currently, like I said, because of the situation where my band was in, where, we're like, we're trying to get some PR, we're trying to, see if we can get some press or whatever. And then all of a sudden, I found myself being super conscious, unfortunately, now about like things like perception and like how I'm perceived as an artist and as a writer and everything. And how do you get back to that?
Well, I think you got to think about how you're perceived. You want to have, what's like Duke Ellington, you want to represent yourself with dignity and elegance at all times. You know what I mean? But I don't think there's much integrity or dignity in doing things, artistically making decisions because you think it's going to make you money or making this. That's not artistic integrity. Right. It's interesting to think of about when you were talking about that. I was thinking about like architecture. And architecture, no one can judge. Architecture is judged by the process of making it, not by the finished product.
Oh, that's very true. Yeah.
And it's also not judged, like how you can't really judge it until you see how it stood up 50 years and what, how does it stand? Is it timeless, or is it like now it's out of fashion and it's bad, And so I think with, and the process being that like somebody might not have as much budget, or they might have a more challenging terrain to be working in, you know what I mean? Or they might have clients that are, or codes that are impeding their, it's like it's making their design difficult to execute, And so, and I think in music, a lot of those things are true too. It's like there is the finished product, and do people enjoy it or do they not? But there's also some of that. It's like, did you make this song's a hit because it used, the music of Every Breath You Take, and you had a guy talking on top of it. You know what I mean? So how can you compare that with, The End by the Doors, that's 9 minutes long. It's like, to me, there's no conversation there, but I bet the one sold more copies.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So when you think about all those things, it's like, and you start putting that in there, it kind of makes you kind of go, well, what am I trying to do here? And and if you're thinking about how people want to perceive you as, or Collins Drive as a band, or as songs like that, then they need to be. It is Collins Drive, isn't it?
Yeah, you got it right, dude.
Okay. You're going to think, what do you want? What side of that fence do you want to live on?
Right.
You know what I mean? And I don't think then it makes it kind of be easy. But it's like once that starts entering your conversation when you're writing a song, I mean, what are you doing here? Because if you're just going to be creating product for people, I'm not sure that the music business is has the highest return on your work and in the investment that you put into it,
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like, So like where you're at though, like you're at this kind of a cool place now. I mean, are you guys still on tour? Is the tour still going?
Just got home.
Oh, you
got
just
home at 4 in the morning.
You just
night.
got home, man. So well, first off, welcome home. And then, but that tour was a super cool tour to see you guys be a part of because, I had written a review of the show, and of course, like I said, like in my mind, when I went into it, I was thinking to myself, like, I don't know how this pairing's going to work. It's a little odd to me, and then it kind of hit me, kind of like what we were talking about, like, good music is good music, and then good music kind of surpasses and breaks through any kind of boundaries that might be set by people's expectations. So, like,
well, it's kind of funny that you say about the pairing, because I think that if you take the guys in Alice in Chains, their management and their label probably have a lot of ideas of who they should be paired with.
Right.
But you might find this surprising, or not, I'm saying that sarcastically, that the guys in Alice in Chains don't actually sit around listening to all the bands that just ripped off their sound and sounded exactly like them. They actually tend to not like those bands. You know what I mean? I'm not. They won't say it, but I will. Which would be, I'm not sure that Alice in Chains is spinning the new Godsmack record and wondering how they can put a tour together.
Yeah, that was a given. That was a given. No, but
they are fans of other bands. Like they do shows with Jane's Addiction and the Cult and stuff like that, and those are bands that they like. So I think that but the Cult doesn't sound anything like Alice in Chains.
Correct. Right.
So I don't think that to me they just want good music, not and at the same time they also want to use their position to help the people that they believe in and care about and stuff like that. And so that's why those relationships are really important,
which is super cool, and like what a great compliment, for you as an artist and as a writer and as your band, which, by the way, your band was absolutely fantastic. I wish I would have seen you play some guitar though, but how did it feel to be a front man out there,
I don't know, and I've done it before.
Yeah,
I kind of like it in some way. It's a lot less stressful, and I think it's a lot easier to connect. Makes it easier to connect with people.
Yeah,
but that's kind of what I wanted to do this tour. Is I kind of the last few tours I did it a different way, and so it's like I want to change it up for my own interest,
Right.
And I'm a fan of like big, like people like Prince and stuff like that. They kind of keep you guessing. You know what I mean? They're going to do it, and I think that's. You got to entertain yourself, and so I wanted to entertain myself and try something. So naturally, now that we just did 30 shows, I'm kind of jonesing to play guitar. But then at the time, I just did, the Static Land tours last year, and those tours were all playing guitar and singing at the same time. So I kind of wanted to do the other thing.
Right. Well, so what's next for you guys, and for Walking Papers? I mean, you just got done with the Alice in Chains tour.
As sad as it sounds, it's a bunch of social media to get ready for our next tour.
I fucking love it. Oh, if you need a hand, don't call me.
Yeah, the next 2 months will be nonstop social media bullshit to get ready to go on the European tour. So
will you guys? Because I mean, WPII came out this year, which by the way was I told you was like such an inspiring album to me to hear, like as a musician and as a songwriter. Like it was not the album I was expecting to hear. I didn't know what to expect, and then when I finally caved in and listened to my friend and gave it a listen, I just was floored, and so of course now I want more, so like are we gonna get like a headline tour, or like what do you think's gonna happen?
I hope so. I mean, a lot of people don't know that that record's a couple years old for me. The Static Line record is actually a more recent record.
Right.
You know? And so, I mean, the European dates that we're doing are those are headlining dates over there. And then we'll just kind of have to see what lines up next. But it seems like they should try to circle us back through the places we went, because we definitely picked up a lot of new people and, you know, and fans and stuff like that, and made a lot of new relationships. So it'd be cool to kind of revisit those people and get to play some longer sets and, you know, show that we have a few more dimensions to what we do. 45 minutes or whatever it is.
Right,
you know?
Right. Well, so, and I guess my final question too is that so you have Static Land, you've got Walking Papers, and oh God, I'm sorry, it's slipping by me. The other project, the other
the missionary.
The missionary position. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like, are they all active projects that you just kind of bounce back and forth between? And if so, like, how do you juggle them, and how do you balance them, and like how do you decide what gets kind of the attention that it needs when?
Yeah, I kind of look at it as it's one body of work. You know, there's songs that I wrote, but it was kind of like the different people and the respect for the people that I had, you know. And it's like a lot of people's egos get in the way or whatever, you know. I had to do a Static Line record because I wasn't allowed to do another Walking Papers record at that time. You know, because people weren't sure what they were doing, and I was like, well, I'm not going to sit here and not make a record while I'm waiting, you know. And I had offers from a label to make a record, and so I had an opportunity to do that. So it's like, why would I not get paid to go write songs and record them? You know what I mean?
Right.
And get a couple runs around the track. So I did. The unfortunate part is that, you know, you're spread in all these different directions, and people aren't connecting the dots of all those bands, that those are all songs that I wrote, and putting it all in one place where it's easy to navigate, which drives me crazy, because that's the kind of thing that, you know, like if I go in, if I'm working on something, I want my drill bits to all be in the drill box. You know what I mean? I don't want the Colt gun in there. You know what I mean? And the paint stuff, I want that over in the paint box. You know what I mean? And so it's like when I'm trying to put all my songs together, that it's between the 4 different bands because of the people involved, you know. And the missionary position, which kind of started off as just fun. Right. The name was, I mean, you can't even boost, speaking about social media, you can't even boost an ad to promote a show because the name, the missionary position, is in there. They won't let you do it. Right, so now you got a name that you can't even say the name or put it in an advertising. So how are you supposed to let people know about it? You know, and I've had all these great career moves through that I've trusted. Like, hey, let's make a record. Let's not put our name on the cover. It's screwing up the art design. Smart. Let's have another one. I got an idea for our name. Let's just call it the missionary position. It's kind of funny, you know. And then, you know, so constantly I've made a bunch of bad decisions. A lot of good art, but a lot of bad decisions. And then, you know, so that's where we're standing in the shadow of those decisions, and, you know.
Well, Walking Papers seems to be safe, so.
Yeah, Walking Papers is safe enough, and it seemed to get the most traction. So it's like, if I make another record, it might be best to put it in that basket, you know.
Yeah. Now will you ever mix material, like as far as like in a live setting?
Oh, yeah.
I know you've done
some shows.
I know you did some missionary position stuff, you know. So like, you know, I mean,
at the Alice in Chains shows, we played missionary position songs,
right? Yeah.
As Walking Papers, and so that's kind of like I said with the egos. It's like, you know, now that you know, Duff's back to doing his Guns N' Roses thing, and Barrett's doing his thing. But Barrett was actually kind of cool. I played some shows with him, and he asked me to play some shows with him on this run that he did. He was like, "Will you come and do some Walking Paper songs?" And I was like, "Okay." And then he was like, "Do you have any songs that you want to do?" And I was like, kind of thought that was really cool that he even asked. And I was like, you know, I like these missionary position songs. And so he left his ego at home, and he went along and played those songs, you know.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
So that's where it's kind of started. So, and he wasn't like, insulted that we, he thought it was cool to play those songs, and some of those songs, he had a horn section, and those songs had a lot more horns in them than and the Walking Papers didn't really have much of that. So
right.
It was cool to do that and to break it up, but it's like we weren't going to do Guns N' Roses songs. We actually made a conscious effort of like, it's not that band. You know what I mean?
Right. And with Duff being in the band, like I can imagine that at first glance from a lot of people that must be a hard pill to swallow for some. Where they're like, dude, you got Duff in the band. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I'm like, you're at the wrong show.
You're like, yeah, but he's my bass player.
Yeah, kind of. We made the record before he joined,
Right. So
it was cool that like he joined our thing, but it wasn't his thing, you know what I mean? And it definitely wasn't like, hey, let's, where I think some of those bands, people are putting stuff together to go like, we can circle the track because we'll make a bunch of money playing Guns N' Roses songs, what they're doing, they have their band to do that, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and
it's so funny too, like you said, some of that, and I probably should let you go because I got some things to do, but they I'll have people go, it's not Walking Papers without Duff. And I'm like, well, you didn't play on the first fucking record in the first place. And then I'll be like, there's going to be a lot of people that are Guns N' Roses fans are going to be disappointed. And I'm like, well, maybe you can go and see his other band that doesn't have all the original members too.
Actually, I have to tell you something funny a friend of mine said.
Because we actually are the original members. Because
you actually are the original members, which is hilarious. Actually, a friend of mine asked me, he's like, dude, so when you hung out with Jeff from Walking Papers, are they touring in a van or a bus? And I was like, they're touring in a van. And he goes, no Duff, no bus. And I was like, fuck that, dude.
Yeah.
I was like,
no. Well, and that was my thing too. I would have never, I did take a bus with them. Duff wanted a bus, but it's like we couldn't afford it any more than we could now.
Yeah, screw that, man.
And if it was up to me, I wouldn't have took a bus in the first place because I just think it's unnecessary and it's a waste of money.
Well, it's like you said, you want to go home with money in your pocket, so,
right. And so it's like, and on those tours, we didn't because of that. And then on these ones we do. So there you go,
Learn how to scrunch up, Duff. You're in the back seat, dude.
And he don't have to. He can afford to not make money while he's doing it, but then the rest of us, it's like we don't have that luxury.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely.
But I didn't see him going, hey, although he did, I'm all for giving credit where credit's due and taking accountability for whatever. And he was, he wasn't like, hey guys, I'll get it. You know what I mean? He wasn't offering to pay for it, but at the same time, he did open a lot of doors and make things happen for us.
Yeah.
But, like sometimes they're like, will you guys do a Kickstarter thing for this or that? And they're like, how can you do a Kickstarter thing when you have some guy in your band that's a multi-millionaire? You know what I mean? And ask the fans to pay for it. Really? No, I can't. I just don't feel right about that. But then I wouldn't feel right about charging $200 for tickets to see someone. You know what I mean?
That's hilarious. It's like, just ask Duff for the money. Well, Jeff, dude, man, I really enjoyed this interview, man. Thank you for taking the time to talk about the craft and the business
pleasure.
and all that
You're
stuff,
easy to talk to.
Well, thanks a lot, man, and we'll talk to you again soon.
I look forward to that, Don.
All right,
you take
thanks.
it easy.
You too.
Bye.